We can't tell you how frustrating it was for us to upload our podcast when we first got started. The websites were clunky, we had data limits, and it was all so confusing. That is, until we found Zencastr. Zencastr is an online platform built for podcasters to not only upload their podcasts, track their listeners, connect their audience, and so much more. Zencastr plans have no upload or download limits, so your cost won't grow as you do. Embed their player that automatically updates to show the latest episode of your show. Zencastr lets you see your podcast downloads along with your traffic, website, and Google Analytics. Zencastr also supports multiple podcasts under one account. The best part is, if you already have a podcast on another platform, you can switch to Zencastr with a one-click importer, all free of charge. So what are you waiting for? Head over to howtomakeapodcast.co/Zencastr to start saving time and money with your podcast today.
Hello and welcome to How to Make a Podcast. My name is John Bunn. Today I'm joined, as always, by Nick Miller. Nick, it's a good day. What's good in your world?
Dude, it is a good day. I am doing well. I'm excited to sit here and talk with you today, as always. I think we say that a lot, as always, but I'm happy to be here. I'm excited about our podcast. I don't know. I love podcasting. I love talking. I like to sit in front of the mic and talk. So it's a good day.
It is crazy that this is life. You know,
it is.
In the last weeks, we've opened up the How to Make a Podcast shop. People are purchasing templates. We've had people purchase our course. We have a How to Film Weddings podcast. We're doing this. It's like a full-time income. It's mind-blowing, and to think about like how, there's a lot of people in the group that want to be in that position and are messaging us, and like everything is just kind of, we're seeing how people are being helped, and that's what's so exciting about what we're doing. Nick, one of my good friends, Ryan, and I have been talking a lot lately. He actually posted in the group last week talking about how he was able to get a big sponsor in his podcast, and he was like, man, I have a sponsor, and I'm really thinking about starting my own Facebook group, and should I do it? And he was asking me all these questions about like, well, how do you, maintain it? How do you and I just thought, man, it'd be really cool to just have an entire episode breaking down why we think that if you have a podcast that you should have a Facebook group or something similar. So that's the topic for today. If you're thinking, I don't need that, I don't want that, I would encourage you, listen to this episode. It's going to be around 30 minutes long, and hear us out on why we think that you should do it. So Nick, without further ado, any other thing you want to add? You had a breath. Okay.
No, I don't think I have anything I want to add. We're talking about why you should have a Facebook group for your podcast. I summed up what you said in like 3 words.
Yeah, that's how you do it. All right, so let's jump into this week's episode.
Yeah, let's do it. Are we jumping in? We're going. We're going.
Yeah, we can do it. So, Nick, with our How to Film Weddings podcast, we definitely have seen major success by having a Facebook group there. We've got nearly 7,000 people in a group. And then with How to Make a Podcast, we just started the group this summer, and 2.5 months in, we're already at 3,000 people in that group, and they have been like the heartbeat of how we've had success. They have been this hub for us. So, it really comes down to, and we talked about this in the podcast challenge, but building a loyal following. And Facebook groups will help you to have a loyal following, and it turns into influence, and then that influence turns into not only revenue but impact, and so it all flows together. And if you have a Facebook group, you're able to build this loyalty because you can interact with the people that are listening to your podcast. If you think about it, if you're in our Facebook group and we've interacted with you, you feel like you know us, and that's good, and we want you to feel that way, and we want to get to know you too, because like talking with Ryan, I'm able to know, people want to know about Facebook groups. And so I'm able to, record episodes with you and kind of give the knowledge on that. So anyway, the Facebook group is where it's at. Nick, add some stuff here.
Yeah.
Add some good stuff. Put some whipped cream on top.
I'll put the whipped cream and the cherry on that. So, we're talking about, having influence, and influence leads to, revenue and impact. When we were doing the Perfect Podcast Challenge a few weeks ago, this quote from Zig Ziglar kept on coming back up over and over again. And it was, if you give people what they want, you will eventually get what you want. Maybe paraphrase a little bit, but that's the idea. And so with our podcast and with our Facebook group, we are giving people value. We are giving them things that they want. I actually just was messaging with a guy from our How to Film Weddings Facebook group who had a question and, was just wondering things, but he was like, man, I really appreciate this group. I have learned so much from you guys and your podcast, but also being able to communicate with other wedding filmmakers within the group. It's so powerful. And the Facebook group just allows for this central hub where people can really interact with each other. It does take some work, to get it going and to build it, but we think that it is great for your podcast so that like-minded people can be in there and have conversations and that kind of stuff. So, John, let's go ahead and jump in here. Why we think Facebook groups are, or something like Facebook group. I'm sure, there's forums on, I'm not on Reddit, but I'm sure there's something on Reddit or something like that. There are other places, but Facebook seems to be the big one. Okay. Why do we think that Facebook groups are one of the best tools that we have found for our podcasts?
Yeah, if you think about it, like I don't do much on Facebook besides get into the different groups that I'm on. I connect a little bit with family, but like for the most part, I've unfollowed pretty much everybody that talks anything about politics or, shares things on Farmville. I don't know if that's still a thing, but like Facebook is kind of like this weird, I made Nick lose it. Do you remember Farmville? It was so bad when people could invite you.
My mom invited me like every day.
Yeah. But anyway, we're showing how old we are. But anyway, on Facebook, it's the largest social media platform in the world, and they are pushing groups. And it's honestly the idea of the group itself is the main reason why I'm on Facebook at all. But interacting and what it allows us to do has changed. Like it's this tool that's for free that if you build, you can really, really benefit. And so why we've, what you asked me, like why we think it's the best. Number one thing for me is that it creates community. It's a place for you to interact with your listeners. And, you don't necessarily want to give your cell phone number to everybody or your email address to everybody. You can turn Facebook on and off. You can put, you can turn off notifications if you want to, but it gives people access to you as the personality of your Facebook group. Like you can see my profile picture, you can see things about me, and like it makes it seem more personal than just an email. It drives home, like if you have your faces in front of people, but you can really build that community, and by showing up again and again in front of people, you are able to build that community. That's the first thing for sure.
Yeah, definitely. And another thing why we love, we have built this community, and John and I have made ourselves as like authority figures. And I don't mean like, we have all the answers or anything, but, we have set up our communities so that, people look up to us, and we developed, the Facebook group, and we developed a certain kind of culture around it. And because of these sort of things, because of this influence that we've had, we're able to get some really good feedback on the types of things that we want our listeners to hear. John and I can love to talk about, let's say we both really have this massive shoe collection, which we don't, like Nikes, like Jordans, like, or Kobe shoes. Kobe's. I know you like the Kobe.
Respect.
Anyways, if John and I really like that stuff and we wanted to talk about it and we started talking about it, but none of our listeners wanted to hear that, then it would cause our podcast to tank. Yeah, that's totally out of our niche and not the stuff we want to talk about. But when you have a Facebook group, you have ideas that you want to talk about, or maybe you are running out of ideas. You can go to them and kind of crowdsource for information, get some feedback. Maybe you're trying something a little bit different, a little bit new. You can ask people, hey, did you like this? Was this powerful? Was it good? Did you like it?
Yeah, and along the lines of that feedback, there's so many different ways to get feedback in a Facebook group. You can create polls, you can go live in the group. There's different ways to do it. I know that what I do in both of our groups, Nick, is I'll just go through and read through people's questions and comments. whether you're doing some kind of an educational podcast or whether like people will have conversations around things that are important. And so you can kind of just look through your group and see what questions are being asked over and over again, or what people are talking about, or that kind of thing will give you all kinds of feedback and will give you the ability to like look through it and say, oh, maybe I could do a podcast on this. And then you can ask in your group, what do you guys think if I do some, podcasts on these things? And that feedback is super helpful for you in your podcast. And that leads me to the next thing that I really, we talked about it a little bit earlier, but building loyalty and just constantly showing up and giving the correct advice, or you being that voice of reason, or being funny, or whatever it is that your podcast is about, by being in front of people. Somebody today posted in our How to Make a Podcast group, and they said, hey, one of my podcasts was deleted. I'm confused, and they were a little frustrated. In our group, we only allow people to share their podcasts inside of threads. And instead of me being upset about that, the person obviously didn't know that was kind of the rule in our group. I just commented in there and I said, hey, I'm really sorry about deleting your post. But what we found is most podcaster groups are just filled with people spamming the group, trying to show off their podcast to get more download numbers. Really sorry. If you see any other posts, please let me know. And there's a lot of people that have liked and hearted that comment. And it's just showed them that, like, I care about what you say. And at the same time, like, I'm still going to stick to like the vibe that we're going for in the community. But that builds loyalty and trust with people, that it's like, oh, that John guy, he's intentional. He's got his stuff together. And we did that so much in the How to Film Weddings group, where we're just giving good advice and we're responding in comments. And it's not just like, here, check out my stuff. But this is some of that give, that dig. Like that's what we're doing inside the group. I'm spending 30, 45 minutes a day inside of both of our groups combined, just answering people's questions, making sure that things are going well, and like building that loyalty. And as you know, that loyalty, that's where that builds that pure audience. If that guy that made that post today, Nick, was like, well, I'm really offended at John for deleting my post, and he left, that's fine. Like, I don't want him to leave and I don't want him not to like us, but at the end of the day, we are, curating a feed that is helpful to podcasters that want to learn how to make a profitable podcast. And so, if there's people trolling or different things like that, we're always stepping in and building loyalty by being that constant voice again and again. And over time, we can't tell you how much that credibility gives you for your brand, your podcast as well.
Yeah. And the next thing, we have, as of right now today, we have 3,000 people in our How to Make a Podcast group, and we have over close to 7,000 people in our How to Film Weddings group. And so whenever we have a new episode that drops, we're automatically getting quite a number of views or listens to our podcast. We kind of lump them all in together because, we have our Facebook list views as we count those as listens, the same as downloads. And so we're just getting more eyeballs. We're getting more ears on our podcast because we have this group that has people. Another thing that we're able to do with our group is we sell digital products for both of our podcasts, and we're able to talk about those and push those and not spam other people's groups. Like, I think that that is the thing that I keep coming back to about promoting your podcast. Like you said with that other guy, hey, I posted this and it got deleted. What's going on? Where's that thread? And you said that, and all those people liking and hearting that comment. Whenever you're in, like, the one that I think of is podcasts with an exclamation point. That's one of the groups I'm in. And every single post is someone say, here's my podcast, listen to it. Here's my podcast, listen to it. And it's white noise. Like, nothing gets through to anyone. And so when you're intentional about that and you have your own group with its own rules, okay, we can share our podcast, we can share our products, and other people are actually able to see it and interact with it because it's not just white noise. There's purpose behind it.
Yeah, and that promotion, you can promote, like, you can mark announcements in your Facebook group. So like someone today in our How to Film Weddings group made a video and said, I bought this digital template product and it made me a lot of money. And I was like, oh my goodness, I'm going to mark that as an announcement and like comment on it. And so it's one of the first things that shows up. And so we're able to promote other people's posts, or we can mark different, our episode of the week and different things like that. But like being able to promote our podcast or our products, like, in a non-spammy way. You know, we mix that with all kinds of other things, but every now and then there's something that we want to sell or we want to show you, and it makes it a really easy way for us to do that in a non-spam another group kind of way for sure. And it leads to really, you know, one of the other things that is why I think Facebooks are the best tool right now for podcasters is it's another place for you to run advertisements for your sponsors and for your show. And so like on our banner, we have our, you know, the logos of our sponsors in both of our groups. We're able to show off and tell the sponsors, hey, you're going to be promoted in the group. We're going to talk about you whenever possible, you know, whenever it makes sense. If somebody asks who you recommend to edit podcasts, we're going to say the podcast editors or, you know, Core Financial, those kinds of things. And then we're able to, at that point, like the other side of it is being able to promote and pump up our show before a new episode comes out, or, you know, and say tomorrow is coming a new episode, you know, or when we were about to launch our press kit a week ago, I posted the day before, like a big announcement's coming tomorrow. And I marked it as an announcement, and it just builds that momentum and that hype. There's so many more tools, but those, Nick, to me, were the top 6 tools. We want to get into, and after the break, just kind of why a Facebook, or when we started a Facebook group, and then our strategy for doing that. So we are going to do that right after this break. If you have a pulse, you probably hate the subject of taxes and running the bookkeeping portion of your business. But like it or not, if you want to be a successful podcaster, you are going to have to pay attention to your numbers. But don't worry, we have the answer for you, Core Financial. Our friends over at Core Financial have taken the pressure off of us so we can focus on what we love doing most, running our podcast. They take care of all of our taxes, monthly bookkeeping, financial plans, and make sure we take full advantage of all of the tax benefits we qualify for. It just feels good knowing we aren't going to get a big surprise during tax season. If you are serious about building a business with your podcast, head on over to howtomakeapodcast.co/core to see what they can do for you.
So you've got everything you need for your podcast. You've recorded your audio and video. You're so excited, but wait, you don't know how to master the audio or edit the video of your podcast. We know someone who can help. The podcast editors. Picture this. You record both audio and video for your podcast. You upload it to your remote editor, and a few days later, your podcast is ready for you to upload and push to the world. What will you do with your extra time? Connect with sponsors? Grow your Facebook group? Start that project or even course you have dreamed of for months? The possibilities are endless. We are blown away by the podcast editors and love working with them and using their services. They can edit audio, video, or both for your podcast. Don't get stuck trying to do this on your own. Get in touch with the podcast editors today. If you'd like to save 50% off of your first project, head over to howtomakeapodcast.co/thepodcasteditors.
And we are back from break, and we are going to go straight into the question of the day presented by Zencast. Nick, when is a good time to start your Facebook group?
Man, I love this question. And I'm sure that there's a lot of you out there that within your specific niche, you are a part of multiple Facebook groups that have to do with that topic. And whenever John and I started having this conversation about a Facebook group, John was really adamant about not starting one. And we're talking how to film weddings, because there were 2 like really big wedding video groups. There are all these little ones popping up, people trying to make, stuff here and there. And John was like, I don't want to be just another, white noise. Like I just don't want to be another group, and I don't want to do that. And then I can't remember the exact pinpointed reason. Maybe it was we had an idea for a product or something specific, but I was like, okay, dude, it's time to start a podcast, or to start a Facebook group for our How to Film Weddings podcast. And John was like, all right, let's do it. And John had started this Facebook group, I don't know, 5 years ago or so, that had, 300 or 400 people in it. So we just, took that one over, changed the name, changed the branding, changed all the stuff about it. And we decided to do it because the benefits to us outweighed the cons. Okay, we had our podcast. It was growing. It was getting numbers. People were listening to it, and we wanted a hub where people could interact. People were talking to us about, "Hey, man, we love the stuff that you're doing. It's great," and we wanted to do something that was a new feel, a new vibe. And so we decided that after we had a few months of successfully pumping out content, that it was time for us to launch our Facebook group. Obviously, with How to Make a Podcast, we took a different approach where we decided to launch the group, try to grow that group, and then after a few months, launch the podcast centered around that group. So it was just a different approach. But again, if you have a product that you are going to sell that goes along with your podcast, I think starting a podcast group whenever is a great way to go. Or if you just want it to be a fun, entertaining thing, the point is, whenever you're ready to start a podcast group, you have to ask yourself, what am I going to give? What value does this add? And if it doesn't add value, then it doesn't really matter. And one of the value things that we had with our Facebook group was setting up the tone or the vibe or the feel of the group. So John, why don't you talk about that?
Yeah, and on the heels of the whole conversation of when to start, you might be thinking, oh, that's just another thing to do, and I'm already feeling behind, or I feel like I don't have enough. And everybody out there is in different positions, of course, but the tone, the vibe, why we decided, it all kind of goes in this and like works to the same kind of point here. And that was like, we decided to do that group because like there wasn't anywhere where our vibe was, we could just be us and not feel like we're spamming people. We're talking on our podcast about not spamming people, but every week we're going into other groups and we're, just sharing our podcast and doing things like that. And it's definitely been like, for us, like the vibe, the tone, all that filtered in to when we started it. And what we wanted was a place that was safe for new people and for people that have been doing it for a long time. And like at a certain point, it was costing us a lot of money and, like potential by not having a group. And that's when, we were going to have a product, we were going to do things. And every week it'd be like, we're messaging admins of other groups, just saying like, can we share our podcast in your group? And, once we figured out like, okay, this is the tone and the vibe that we want to have, that is what we realized was going to differentiate us from other Facebook groups. And so when you're setting up your Facebook group, if you do one, it's like, what is it going to offer that something else doesn't? If you think about How to Make a Podcast in our group, if you've been in it for long, you realize that Nick and I are very present, where our faces are on, the banner. We are the voices, you know who we are, like we're very present. If you go to other Facebook groups on podcasting, it's kind of like just a generic banner. You don't know who's in charge. It's kind of the wild, wild west. People are posting their episodes. It's not very well intentioned when it comes to what the point is and stuff. And so we're not just like a group about podcasts. We are a group centered around our podcast and showing off the things that we think are going to benefit you the most. And so knowing that going, with your podcast, knowing that tone and that vibe is going to help you determine like, okay, I do want to start a group because I want to be able to control the narrative instead of just showing up in other people's groups. So did that answer the question? I know I kind of went around it a bunch, but like I needed to process it and get there. I process it out sometimes. Definitely.
So as you're setting up your tone, as you're setting up your vibe, as you're setting up your group, you really need a strategy. A quote that I heard a long time ago that I absolutely love is, hope is not a strategy, meaning I'm going to make this Facebook group and I hope it turns out well. Well, that's not a good strategy moving forward. You need to have actionable steps, things that you can do. And so one of the things that we knew that was important is we wanted to have daily place where people can have conversations, where people can comment, where they can share their work, where they can share the things that they're doing, where they can answer questions. And so we said we are going to have daily threads I think we do at least 5 a week, weekdays and on Saturdays. We typically don't do a thread on podcast launch days. So you have this daily thread, and then you're just asking a question. In our wedding video group, we're asking, hey, show us a wedding film. Introduce yourself. We do a Wednesday win. What's something that you're excited about? So it's not just specific on the topic of our niche, but it's also like getting people to share and interact. And then in our podcast group, we've said, hey, show us your numbers. And it's just one to kind of help, show people, where you have been, how much you've grown, encourage each other to do that, show your podcast setup, these types of things, and to spark conversation, so that you can have people get connected with each other and that sort of thing. So that's the first strategy. And then the next one is, do you have something to add to that, or do you want to do the next one?
No, you can do the next one. I wanted to go just a next level when it comes to strategy on the reason for the daily threads. Facebook wants you to get sucked into Facebook and to be on there longer and longer and longer. And the way that they are realizing that is if people are in groups and they're connected, they're going to get on there all day and interact with each other. And so at the beginning of our group, in How to Film Weddings especially, if anybody commented anything, we would comment back with a question or trying to get them to interact with the thread more. So if somebody posted a wedding film, we would be like, wow, that's great. What camera did you use? And we actually cared what camera they used. And then they would respond and we'd say, who else uses that camera? And or whatever. And so there might only be 50 people in the group, but you're really getting, a post to get lots of interaction. And so you'll see us in our group going in and maybe, I'll make a weekly post right now where we're welcoming in all the new members. It tags all the new members. It gives you a notification. And then people start welcoming and saying hello. And I start commenting and Nick starts commenting. And the reason that, one of the reasons we do that is because we know that if we can get you going and interacting with people in the community, that the group will show up more to you, which is great. But the main thing is we know if you can get active in the How to Make a Podcast community, you're going to grow and get better. And what's cool about that is that we are starting to see more and more people every day that whenever someone joins the Facebook group or asks to join, it'll say invited by. And there's so many more people every day that it's saying invited by this person, invited by, which means that you think the group is great and you're sharing it with somebody else. And I would, if you haven't invited anybody and you think the group is great, be sure to help us do that. So I just wanted to, that's the next level, a deep nugget, if you will, on the reason for the daily threads and the conversation. So you can talk about the second one. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, that's fine. I was going to let you talk about the second one, but I'll do it since you shared all that helpful information. We have made it to be a safe place for your community. One of the, we have rules that people, follow that they have to agree upon in order for us to allow them to enter the group. And, it's, stuff that's I'm not going to, personally attack anyone. I'm not going to be an a-hole, that sort of vibe. I don't know if I could say that, but I did.
Yeah, you did.
Yeah.
Blake
I'm not going to be
a beep when you say the letter A.
Even though I just said A, that was it. Have them so that they have things that we expect out of them. And then whenever people do get out of line and people get out of line or they just don't know the rules or they just don't know things, then we can delete, their comments and let them know why it was that we deleted them. We want to have this to be an education place and we want it to be a place where you can learn. And in some of the wedding video groups, people would ask, newbies would ask questions and they would just get ripped and torn apart because they just didn't know. And they were just asking a question and people would tear into them. And we didn't want that for our communities. So we have these guidelines, these rules where it's safe, where if you're a seasoned vet and you know everything, but you have a little question, you can ask them. Or if you are someone that is just getting started and you don't know what's going on, you can feel safe and ask questions there. So that's number 2. What's another strategy that you would have?
in our group, we wanted to create events. We wanted to create things that were happening so people felt like they needed to be there when it was happening and be involved, and the more that we can get people involved, the more we know that they can, like get out of it, the more that they're going to interact, the more they're going to meet more people. And so some of the things that we did to create events or connection with people, and that's really the next thing, is we really wanted to create connections. Each week we did a watch party and still do watch parties where we go live with our new episode, and Nick and I are in there and interacting with people. We will do things, live Q&As where we record inside of the group, but it's all about helping connect people, because if we can, like, I know one of our threads is kind of like introduce yourself, connect with somebody else, comment, and we're always saying comment on someone else's post, take the time. In a world where we are so focused on ourselves, to be honest, everyone's focusing on themselves. Mm-hmm. We want a place where you can help somebody else out, whether you're further along in your podcast or not. That's why we have the thread that show us your stats. It's not so like we can just know how many downloads you have or things like that. Or the reason we have you share your podcast episode is because we want you to connect with other people. And so some of the most exciting things that I'm seeing in our group already for How to Make a Podcast is people. I went to lunch with a podcaster last week from Tulsa here, and he was like, yeah, I had somebody on my podcast that I met in your group. And like, that's the kind of stuff that like really, if we're able to help create a platform for people to connect with each other, and if you're on your podcast and people are connecting with each other, they feel part of your tribe. And when they feel part of your tribe, they will go to bat for you, and they're there for you. There's so many people already in How to Make a Podcast that, are all in with us and know that we're just trying to help people. And so that ultimately ends up, building where we make money off of course sales or things like that, which is great. But like, it all flows through that community and building those loyal followers and stuff. So there's a lot more strategies for what we do in our Facebook group, but those are kind of the reasons behind what we're doing. So yeah.
We kind of look at the Facebook group as, the water cooler talk you would typically get around the office. For our wedding video podcast, there is a large majority of people that are solo entrepreneurs, that they're working full time in this business, and they're at home and they spend all this time by themselves and they don't get that interaction with other people. And so we want our Facebook group to be a place where they can, take that 5-minute break that turns into an hour, because you just get lost and sucked in or something like that. But we want it to be a place where people can interact with others, where you can check in with your community, where you can see what's going on. You can just see how people are doing and help. And that's the vibe, that's the what John and I kind of set out to do is, we want to show that we're there to help and we're there to give advice and we're there to just chat and mingle with people, in our group. And hopefully with others seeing the leaders of this group do those things, they are more likely to do that stuff themselves. And so it's just a great place for people to talk and interact. And I love that, that you brought up about how, from our podcast group, how people are getting connected with each other and starting to, work with each other and be on each other's podcasts and all that kind of stuff. So all of that is made possible because we have our Facebook group.
Yeah, and if you're out there and you're like considering it, we don't just recommend just going out, starting a group and then figuring it out. I mean, you really want to strategize. And one of the things, and it's fun and interesting because it's kind of like Inception. This is like a podcast about podcasting. We have a Facebook group showing you how to do your Facebook group. You can steal from us our ideas, take it and make daily threads, do different things, but like watch what we're doing. Steal from it, you can copy and paste like different threads on introducing yourself and put it into your group, or, like create graphics that are similar or things like that. But if you're looking at how we're doing it, you're looking at our banner graphics, you're watching our weekly watch parties, you're seeing how we moderate the group, how we interact with others. That is what we want to be for you. It's like the same thing with like how we're producing this podcast or how we are on this podcast. It's like, we are just doing what if you do replicate and then change it and make it your own, what we're doing, you're going to see success in your business. And so, it's always so cool and also a little weird to kind of like pull the curtain back and be like, this is what we're doing and show you while we're actually doing it. And so, Yeah, just look at what we're doing. You know, we don't think we know everything by any means at all, but like the heart behind this group and the heart behind your group should be to help others.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you're on the fence about starting a Facebook group, maybe this episode has kind of pushed you in the direction to maybe consider it and think about it. One of the things that is a big selling point, I think, to our sponsors is the fact that we have, in our How to Film Weddings group, we have 7,000 people in it. In our podcast group, we have 3,000 people in it. And so we're able to show them. And one of the ways that we are able to show our sponsors our numbers and stuff is by our brand new press kit, which is available at howtomakeapodcast.co/shop. You go there, you can buy this press kit. It is 12 pages. It's a template. It's a Photoshop file. If you don't have Photoshop, no worries. We found this other program that is completely online that you can open Photoshop documents in, and it's just like Photoshop, except it's free online. So you can go in and you can create this press kit so that you can share with your sponsors and you can put in numbers, all this stuff to really sell them. That is available at our shop. Again, that's howtomakeapodcast.co/shop. It's our press kit. John, this has been a really good episode talking all about Facebook groups. Next week, we're going to jump into how to grow your Facebook group. So this week you've decided that you want to do it and your strategy with it and the plan. Next week, we're going to talk about how to grow it. It's been great catching up with you. And until next time, we'll see you.
See you guys.